Okay, so now let's prepare our asset for the texturing process. Let's go to recent files here, and in my case, it's just the Gramophone blend. Just in case if you don't have the file, just feel free to go to the resources, like in my lecture, you're gonna have this file available to download, and just get this one, and then you can just open that one, go to file, and then just open here, okay? And then you're gonna have something like this. This is where we finished. This is from our previous lecture here, so let me press 1. So this is the perfect front view. Just for you to understand what I did here, just a small thing I changed. For example, if your gramophone or asset is displaced, like the location is maybe not really perfectly aligned. Just in case, if you can see your asset is not really aligned. So if I press 7, they would just maybe shift this a little bit, something like this. So it's not really aligned. Maybe it's also maybe here. You understand what I mean, okay? You can completely get rid of this problem by simply clicking on this mesh. Let's go into edit mode. Let's press 2 for edge select, then enable the X-ray. And in this case, let's just get those bottom edges, okay? Let's just drag select those things. Then you can Shift S and put the cursor to the selected edges. Then your cursor will be directly this gray thingy here you have here. The cursor will be in the center of the mesh because we have all those bottom parts selected. Now, the thing is, you might just want to have this origin, this orange dot, you want to have it also here. So what you need to do is you need to tap out, okay? Then you're back in object mode, go to object, and then you set the origin to the 3D cursor. Then you will have your origin here, exactly like it is here in the cursor. And then you want to make sure inside object mode, you want to Shift S and put the cursor back to the word origin. So now this one is back. And a final step you need to do is, again, Shift S, but in this case, you want to put the selection, you currently clicked on that, okay, so the asset, you want to put this selection to the cursor, boom. And then your mesh will be perfectly aligned. Okay, so for the front view, it's perfectly aligned. And when we press 7, it's also here perfectly, you can see, perfectly aligned. Just for you to understand how you can prepare your mesh in terms of like location, rotation, and scale and all that stuff. Also make sure that your scale needs to be 1, 1, and 1, okay? If it's not, because we scaled this one in the previous lecture, click on that mesh, Control A, and then all transforms. Pretty important. If you just want to reset the scale, of course you can only apply the scale, but but make sure that you always set all transforms. Let's disable the X-ray, okay? And then you will be good to go for export. So you can click on this mesh, file, and then export FBX. In my case, I already did that. And then you can just go here, limit to selected objects, and then object types, just to make sure, click on mesh. Okay, selected objects, mesh, and that's it. You don't need to change anything else here. Okay, and then export FBX as the so-called gramophone. And then you will be good to go. In my case, I did that already, like I said, and then I can just close this one. Okay, and I also don't need to save. And now we are here inside Substance Painter. Let's go. Like for you, this is an empty file. You don't have anything here, okay? You need to go to File here on the top left. Go to File here. And then let's do a new. And let's do the resolution. This is just preview resolution during the process. I want to see it in 4K. And then you have the template called PBR Metallic Roughness. This is perfect for us. And then the file you want to choose is the so-called gramophone.fbx. And then open that one up. And then you can just hit OK. So let me just discard this. And then you're going to have something like this. This is pretty normal that this is transparent, okay? Because this mesh is one-sided and not two-sided in terms of shading. So what we need to do, we need to go here on this world button, or this shader button here. And then let's go here to geometry, and we want to make this two-sided. So let me just translate for you. It might be two-sided, or maybe it's called back face cutting or back face, but I think it's called two-sided under geometry. And then also you can click here, and let's change the panorama to the atelier. This is just my preference. You can always change this to whatever you like, but in my case, the atelier is something I really like, so the lighting is not too strong, but still I have this nice and soft shadow. Okay, cool. And then you can also enable shadows here, boom. But of course you should reduce the shadow strength and maybe put this to intensive or average. I think it's called average. So you might just want to switch this from lightweight to like medium or like average setting. And then feel free to have a nice shadow here. Let's go for average. Let's put this to like, I don't know, 70. 70 is good. So now you can see we do have some soft shadows here. Basic navigation inside Substance 3D Painter is Shift right click. You can switch your HDRI or your cube map. So your lighting is gonna change because we are rotating this whole cube map. Okay. So find a nice spot for the lighting until you are satisfied. Alt left click, you're gonna rotate your camera. Alt middle mouse button, you're gonna shift your camera. Alt right mouse button, you're gonna zoom in and zoom out. And this is all you need to know in terms of basic navigation. Okay, good. So now let's close this window here, and we want to make sure that we start by texturing our bottom wood. Okay, let me click on this layer here on the right hand side and just press delete. Now, instead of this layer we just deleted, we want to get this bucket here. This bucket means fill layer. Click on this. And this fill layer, let me just call this one like base wood material. Okay, base wood material. In this case, I already have a material for you guys. Okay, let me just open this one up. To make things pretty simple, I used Midjourney for this, so AI, but I prepared all the textures here. Okay, so out of the base color, I created a height, normal, and ambient occlusion map using the Materialize app. Okay, so let me get this one. And then I want to make sure that I let me get a new folder and call this one Legacy Textures. The reason why I call it Legacy Textures is because we're going to have final textures later. Makes sense. So Legacy Textures means those are all like my base textures I'm going to use in order to create my own texture for this type of asset. And then what you can do is go to File and let's import resources. Then click on Add Resources here, open up the legacy textures, and then base color, height, normal, ambient occlusion. Let's open that one up, click on the first one, shift click the last one, so everything is selected. And this is not defined, but we want to put this into the texture category so it's organized. And then we want to make sure that this is default, it stays, so this is the current session. It just means that we add those textures to the current session, and then it will be gone when we just reopen our project. So let me just import this. And now we can decide what we want to use. So we want to use all the textures, makes sense. So let me just disable the metal channel here on the right hand side. And for now, the roughness channel, we don't have a roughness map, but I can put this to 0.8, the roughness. It makes sense because wood is not as shiny. So maybe 0.8 is something we might just want to use, or maybe like 0.7, but we will see. Let me just use 0.7 for, sorry, I cannot type 0.7. So this is a little more shiny maybe then. And then what you can do now, let me put this wood base color into the base color. And then let me put the wood no, we're going to use this one later. Let me put the normal into the normal channel and the height into the height channel. Okay, so now we have this. You can already see that the direction of those fibers, they are correct. So I want to have those fibers horizontally, but you can see it's pretty wavy, right? So what we should do is, when you scroll up, you're going to have the so-called repetition or tiling. You can increase this to something like 2 maybe. Let's do that. Now this looks a little better, in my opinion. But we can get rid of those waves, so we need to disable the lock and then hold Shift and drag this one here. And if you just decrease this, then you're basically stretching this one. But we should not stretch it too much. Maybe like so. All right, cool. Then the color, it still looks it looks stylized. So what we could do before we fix this, let's also do the shift or like the position of our UVs. So we can also change this a little bit. Always make sure that you hold Shift while doing this, and then you can find a nice spot. Maybe something like this. And here as well. Let's just find a different spot. Okay, cool. Let's give it like a different color. Maybe this looks a little too stylized. So right click here. Let's go to filter, click on filter. And we want to make sure that we get the color correction. So we can now use the midtones. So here is like most of the stuff happening. And then we might just want to get the contrast. So we want to have less contrast maybe. Luminosity. So this is basically like the brightness. We can reduce this overall to make it softer or just make it more aggressive. This is up to you. I just want to reduce this a little bit. And also the saturation, I want to reduce just a tiny bit. Let's go to shadows. And we might just want to increase this a tiny bit. Luminosity. Decrease this. But this is up to you, what you want to have. And let's also just desaturate this a little bit. So you can see we're just making it a little more subtle and like a little less stylized here. And then okay, cool. Let's go for highlights as well. Might just want to have a little more contrast. And also more luminosity. And that's basically it. Now you can see like the difference here. Then right click here. Let's go and add a so-called levels. Stay in base color. And now also the levels is pretty interesting. You can make this like, you can make this pop out more if you want to. So yeah, I will go for something like this. Let's go back to color correct. Let's go midtones. Let's do shadows, saturation. Just a little more. Okay, cool. So now this is like our base color for the bottom wood. But of course we are not done yet. Now here comes the fun part. This is just setting up our base color. Nothing else, nothing special, pretty simple, and yeah, pretty simple to do. But what we want to do, we want to go a little further. We want to go like one big step further here. When you go to mode, there's something called bake mesh maps. Get this one. A new window is going to pop up, and we want to set this to 4K. Our mesh maps we're going to bake. We want to do low poly as high poly, yes. And anti-aliasing, we want to set this to like 16 times super sampling. We don't need ID and we don't need the normal, okay? And then you can just bake the mesh maps. Okay, so the baking process took a while. I need to correct myself because I forgot something to tell you. We just disabled the ID and the normal for the bottom wood, okay? So what you need to do is you need to go to main box and you need to disable the ID and then the normal, and then you click on the back bracket and this manual, and you also want to make sure that you disable the ID and the normal. But this is something you don't need to do. This is just to speed up things because we will not use the ID and also we will not use the normal map, okay? But what we're gonna use is the world space normal. So this means this is acting like a position. You can see when you just hover over this, okay? You can see like a preview. This is basically like our vertex position. So what is left, what is on the right side, top, bottom, and then you can mix your colors, you can maybe mix your reflections, you can do a lot of interesting things with those maps. The ambient occlusion is basically something like faking shadow. So everything close together will be black or darker, and everything like flat is gonna be white. So this is just to mimic shadows. The curvature map here, if I hover over this, you can see here, he's considering like, okay, where are those edges? And those edges, they are like more, they will be recognized more, and everything like flat is basically not really affected. The position is also pretty simple. So maybe you just want to have like a nice gradient effect or like a blend effect, maybe a little more dirt on the bottom, maybe something on top. So the position map is pretty handy when it comes to creating like gradient effects for different things. And we're going to have the so-called thickness map. And the thickness map is also like a little similar according to the curvature, but thickness just means that he's calculating, okay, how dense or like how thick is the mesh. If it's just like a plane or maybe it's just like an extruded part, he's also just considering those different things. And we're going to use all those baked maps for the texturing process, and we can create nice effects out of this. So now let's go back to the paint mode here. Okay, back to paint mode. And now what we can do, we can actually now use mask. So if I go to bottom wood again, we do now have our base wood material. Okay, looks pretty boring so far, but now we can make this a little more realistic. What I want to do is I get another layer and I call this one damage, for example. Let me just get the color first. Okay, we only want to take care for we only want to focus on the color now. And now right click here, add a black mask on this new bucket, on this new fill layer. We want to just create a mask here. And inside this mask, we want to add a so-called generator down here. Open up the generator tab and let's get the so-called metal edge. So what the metal edge is doing basically now, once we baked, he's using like the curvature, and he's also using a little bit of the ambient occlusion map just to calculate where are those beveled edges, where are those flat surfaces, and now we can make things a little more interesting, okay? So on the right hand side here, you can actually decide how strong you want to have this effect. I think we should go for something like this maybe, just a tiny bit. The contrast, like how sharp or like how soft you want to have those things. So we should make this a little sharper, to be honest. And let's also get more wear. But there's like one thing which is always bothering me for the metal edge. The metal edge generator we have here, the metal edge wear. It's doing a nice job here on those so-called grunge. Okay, this is so-called grunge we have here. You can decrease this to make it bigger, or you can just make it really tiny. But you can see we have repetitions here. So of course we should reduce the grunge scale to something like, let's set this to 2, for example. Then you're going to have ambient occlusion masking. So you can decide how much you want to mask out for the ambient occlusion. So maybe just a little bit. Yeah, just a tiny bit. And the curvature weight. So we can also completely disable the curvature weight. But now you can see here what we are basically doing. So the more curvature we want to use, the more he's going to cover this damage. But the problem here is it's all pretty even. So this doesn't look natural. We can do something about it. And what we can do is, having this metal edge wear, let's delete this filter here. Okay, let's click on the textures tab here. And let's scroll down. And we want to find like a grunge map. I will just show you what you can find. So by default, maybe this type of sorry for that, this type of map, grunge brushed. If you hover over this, you can see this is some type of like a grunge map, but with like directional effect. If I get this one and put it in between my damage and my metal edge wear, so above the metal edge wear, okay. So now we can see this is my grunge map, but we should adjust the scale. So for the grunge brushed, let's disable the lock and let's set this one like so until we have a nice like a nice directional effect. And let's try this one here. Hold the shift button. I hold the shift key. Let's try maybe this one. Let's try to go for something like this, okay? And now here comes the fun part. If we just change the grunge brushed from normal to multiply, now we're basically hiding all the white values, but all the black values will cut out my metal edge wear mask, basically. So you can see it here. So the grunge mask on top will just give us more variations for our metal edge wear. And we can go here on the grunge brushed texture and we can increase the balance. So we're going to reduce this overall effect, or we reduce the balance. And now this will lead to more variations. And this is now something we really want to have. Maybe more contrast, just a little bit. Okay. Then let's go back to metal edge wear and let's do more grunge amount. Just a tiny bit. Let's go back to grunge brushed and let's decrease this. Okay. Then on top of that, let's get another level. So right click on the grunge brushed, add a levels here. And here you can also get like more contrast and completely change the overall effect. So you can make it sharper, you can make it softer, you can reveal more, you can reveal less. This is perfectly up to you until you find something convincing. All right, so now we have something like this. I like this effect. Let's go to metal edge wear and let's do a little more, but maybe less grunge. Something like that. Grunge brushed. Let's do a little more balance. Okay. More grunge. Now what we can do, we should change the color. So click on this material. Let's change the color to something like bright yellowish. Okay. This always works wonders. This is always something which is pretty nice for like worn wood or damaged wood. Just a slight tint of yellow, but it should be pretty bright. And then the next step would be you activate the height channel and just put it down. Okay, so now you can see you have this peel, like this peel effect. You can even go more crazy, right click on this material and then go to levels, add the levels and change this to height. And here you can also change the overall height separately. Okay, so this looks always a little better with the levels. Then let's go back to the material, play with the height. Okay, cool, I like that. Let's go back to the mask here. Let's go to metal edgeware and let's set the grunge scale to 1. Just a tiny bit of grunge. Adjust the color here. Okay, cool. So now this looks a little better, right? Let's try to add more interesting things. So let's get a new layer. Let's get fine grunge scratches. Let's get this one. But we want to use this as a mask. So just drag it here next to the new bucket. So next to our fill layer here. And then on top of that, let's right click and get a levels. And adjust it like so. Okay. We really want to make sure that we get scratches here. Then let's play with the tiling. Let's go back to grunge scratches, fine. Let's play with the tiling here. We might just want to make this bigger. And then let's get like a generic grunge texture. So maybe this one here, doesn't really matter. And put this up here. Set this to normal. Sorry, not normal. Set this to multiply. And reduce the balance. Or in this case, we should increase the balance here. And also the contrast. This is pretty important. Until you have like random scratches, okay? What you can do also is, let's go to grunges. Let's go to scratches, fine. And let's do rotation. Let's try and go for a 90 maybe. Maybe 90 might be a little better. But you can also just rotate randomly until you find something useful. And also feel free to play with the tiling here, with the scale of your texture. So maybe this one might be a little better. Let's do 90. You can also shift the texture. And then let's change the levels. And let's change the color and also the height. So color, I will go for like something yellow. Color in my case, I will set this also to something like a slight tint here, a slight yellow tint. Maybe like so. And then let's set the height to a minus value, a slight minus value, and then you can see, don't go too crazy, just a tiny bit. Then you're gonna have some nice scratches. If this is just too much for you, feel free to always go back to the levels here, and then you can always decide how much you wanna have. Okay, now as for the roughness part, we should have different roughness values. When we go to roughness, you can see it's all the same roughness value, pretty boring. So what we should do when we go back to material, maybe this should have more reflection. Okay, so this, let me call this scratches and maybe dirt layer or something. So this should have more reflection or less reflection. I think we should decrease the overall reflection. So let's go to roughness, and then you can define the overall roughness. Let's set the channel to roughness. And now you can see we can get more reflection if you want to, or just less reflection. I want to go for something like less reflection. And then when I go to the base wood material, let's set the roughness to something like 0.6. The damage, let's activate the roughness channel, and let's put this to something like 0.9. And the overall scratches, let's put this to 0.5. And the base wood, we should put this to 0.7. Let's set this to multiply. Normal. And then switch the scratches and dirt layer, switch this to roughness. And then the roughness to multiply. So that this is darker. Hence more reflection. Let's do 0.25. Let's see. Now you can see we're getting somewhere, right? You can also play around with the normal. Let's put this back to base color here, this scratches and dirt layer, and use maybe, instead of normal, use subtract. Sometimes it's pretty nice, but then you have to change the color to something darker. Try different blend methods, maybe overlay. But in my case, I will stick to normal. Normal works pretty good. Yeah, roughness 0.25 is good. Height. Don't go too crazy here with the height. Just decrease this a tiny bit. Okay, you can see here the difference. And if you want, you can also blur the scratches a bit layer if you want that. So right click here, add a generator, click on generator and get the so-called, go right click here and add a filter, click on filter, get the blur and put the blur to something like 0.05 or like 0.08. So now it's blending a little more, it's a little softer. Okay, so you can see the difference from here. Looks much more realistic with like a tiny blur. Okay, then I would like to have another layer for this base wood. So let me get another bucket here, fill layer, and we call this one dirt. And for dirt, I want to use a black mask as well. And then let me get like some interesting things. So I might just want to use this grunge paper ripped again as a base mask. But maybe it's going to make sense to have like a different position here. So let's just change this until this looks good. Maybe something like that. And then let's decrease this. Don't go too crazy here. So we should have something soft overall, less contrast. But here, right click, let's do levels, another levels, and then you can also just soften it up just a tiny bit. Maybe something like this. And then let's click on this material here. Let's do subtract. Okay, so now you can see we do have some additional dirt. You can also change the reflection in the roughness channel and also, of course, the color. So let's set the color maybe. Let's try to go for something like blue. Let's go back here to the grunge paper ripped and let's do balance. Need more balance here. Always adjust things here with the levels. Maybe you want to have this like pretty aggressive, but just a tiny bit. Then feel free to go back to the material itself and then let's do I think we should go for something like this. Or let's try normal. something like this. And of course, less roughness, pretty important. Let's do 0.9. Less reflection. This is what I tried to tell you. So now you have like an additional dirt layer. Let's increase the contrast. Let's decrease the balance. Something like that. Let's go back to subtract. Subtract is always nice for like dirt and like top layers. You just need to find the right color value for that. Yeah, I like that. Okay, cool. Then next thing I want to add is like something like dust. So add another bucket, so another fill layer, and call this one dust. And for dust, we want to make sure that we only have color and roughness. So let's try to find something which is maybe suitable. Grunge dust, white. This is something we can do. So put this into the mask here. And let's increase the scale. Not too much. Let's do a 3 and a 3. Get the balance down. Right click, add a levels. Make it softer here. Like so. And then let's do overlay. And let's get like a dark color here, a dark brownish color. Let's go back to the grunge white and increase the balance. Oops, just a tiny bit. Levels. And make it brighter. Let's switch from overlay to darken. And the roughness should be 0.9 as well. And then let's go back to grunge dust white. And just increase this a tiny bit. Now you can see the difference here. And the contrast maybe just a tiny bit. Okay, cool. So now we do have some nice wood texture here. Last layer I want to have is when we check the roughness channel. Let's see. Base wood material. Let's put this to 0.8. The roughness 0.8. 0.8. Okay. 0.75. 0.7. I think 0.7 is good. Then what I would like to do is let's go back to material preview here and let's add another one, and we call this one fatty layer. Okay. Let's get this let's get like a texture which looks a little smeary. Let's get like a smudgy type of like vibe. What do we have here? Grainy vibe, leaky. Let's get this one. Put it into the mask. Now you can see we should maybe increase the contrast a little bit. Yeah, something like that. Let's adjust the scale here. We might just want to have, I think 1 is fine. We click on this material here. We want to make sure that we have roughness pretty low. Let's do 0.2, or let's do 1.5 actually. So 0.15 I try. Yeah, 0.15. And then let's put this to subtract. And reduce. Subtract might not be the good choice. Let's do overlay. Yeah. Something like that. Now you can see you also have like a fatty, smeary layer on top. And feel free to always go back to the grunge vibe leaky and maybe do a little more. Like so. Let's see the roughness channel. Now you can see what we're doing here. Perfect. Let's go back to the damage, to the mask. Let's increase the overall wear level. And also let's get another color here. Yeah, I like that. So now this is our base wood material, right? Pretty cool stuff. So you can see if I just hide those layers, we started off with this, pretty stylized. And then we said, okay, let's do some like color correction. So we did some color correction here, just made it a little more like smooth, a little darker, less saturated. Then we had also levels here for the base color. Chose to make it also a little darker. And then damage. Now you can see this looks not stylized anymore. But on top of that, we're gonna have some scratches together with like a kind of like grudge, together combined with a tiny bit of like grunge, giving also this realism. And then we have dirt on top. Okay. Well, let's go to dirt. Let's do a little more. Yes. And then we have dust. This is pretty important. And we have the fatty layer. And we might just wanna okay, I think this is fine. Perfect. So yeah, this is the step on how to create nice wood. What I want to do is I want to get the soul material. So what we can do here, let's create a folder. And we call this folder damaged wood gramophone. And then get all those layers here. Click on the first one, shift click the last one, and drag it inside this folder. Close this folder and right click, and then let's do smart material. We want to create our own smart material. Now your damaged wood is here under your smart material. What we can do now is we go to our main box and let's just drag and drop this one inside. Okay, let's delete this layer. And now what we can do, step by step, we might just want to go to the base wood material. Let's scale this one differently. Let's put this to 1.5 here, or also maybe 1. Let's do 0.75. So this, we have like some tiny waves here. And then I might just wanna, we can get like a different tint. Let's go to midtones. Less contrast. Let's do shadows. Yeah, maybe just a tiny bit more shadows. So, but this is up to you what you want to have, right? Maybe a little more saturation, just a tiny bit more. Here. Okay, cool. So we're gonna do that. And then let's go to damage. Let's see the damage here. Let's deactivate everything on top. So we only focus on the damage. But you can see there's not really damage here, right? Let's see when we click on this mask. I was just disabling the autosave. So when we click on this mask, let's start with the metal edge wear and let's increase the amount until we find something useful. Less contrast maybe. Yeah, we should have less contrast. Then decrease the wear level. Grunge amount. Maybe just a tiny bit more. And maybe the grunge scale, set this to 2 maybe. And ambient occlusion masking. I think, yeah, something like that. All right, cool. Then let's go to this grunge brushed. Let's see if we need to rotate this. No, actually not. We want to have this going up and down. This is the right direction. And then let's decrease the tiling. Okay, I think this is quite fine. Let's go to the levels here. Sharpen it a little bit. Just make it a little weaker here. Maybe like so. Like small things, but we need to invert this one, right? Let's go to the damage material. Let's invert this one. Like so. So it's going inwards. Yeah, we want to have like slight creases. Okay, so you need to click on your material and then the levels height, and just use this slider here because it needs to go inside. But don't go too crazy. This is always enough. All right, cool. Then we enable these scratches and dirt layer. I think this is fine. We don't really need to change that. Maybe the base color. Let's go to the scratches mask. Play with the scale, maybe just decrease this a tiny bit. Let me go back to the base wood material. I would like to color correct here. Maybe, yeah, something like that. Okay, cool. Then let's enable the dirt. I think the dirt is fine. We might just want to get the scale right. increase the balance a little bit. And then play with the levels here to make it a little softer. Then get the dust, the grunge dust here. Just get a little bit of dust. And the fatty layer. But this is too strong, so let's decrease the balance. Also the contrast. Not really the contrast, but the balance we should decrease. So, yeah. Okay, cool. I like that. Yeah, and that's basically it. So we can now readjust the color. Let's do 0.36 maybe. And let's get back to the bottom wood because I want to have this also a little more. So let's go color correct. Let's do a little more saturation here as well. Yes. Then let's get this wood here from the bottom wood, Control C, and we put this into the top wood. Delete the layer here and Control V. And this is pretty much it. Just do some like minor tweaking, so you can always just tweak it a little bit. So you can always go back here, go to the damage, insert this mask, metal edge wear, and then play with the contrast. So maybe softer or maybe like sharper. I think sharper is fine because it's more realistic that we have like some sharp edges here. And then maybe less. Yeah, I think this is better. Let's go to the grunge brushed. Increase the contrast. But I believe let's see the fatty layer here. Yeah, we should increase the contrast here as well. Okay, cool. So I'm quite happy with this. Now you have a nice wood layer. And I think for this lecture, this is it. It's already a quite long lecture here. In the next lecture, I would like to apply this wood material also here, but we're going to have like a different material here. And yeah, we will just continue. So let me save this. So I call this one Gramophone and just save this as the Substance Painter file. And we're good to go. All right, I'll see you in the next lecture.